pretty good, Madam Secretary. We're all in unison this month. So, with that, Audrey, Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Director Anderson.
Here.
Director Buchanan.
Here.
Director Colson.
Here.
Director DeWitt.
Here.
Director Durrani.
Here.
Director Frega.
Here.
Director Fuentes.
Here.
Director Hobson.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director McGallis.
Here.
Director Melvin.
Here.
Director Pang. Director Ross.
Here.
Director Totten.
Here.
Director Traiani.
Here.
By phone with paperwork completed. Chairman Dillard.
Here.
We have a quorum of 15 present with 1 absent.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you always for your excellent attendance. And if you can make that December 3rd full finance meeting, that's a great time to ask questions and to really get into the greater detail of the service boards that are out there. And so if you can make that meeting, that would be fabulous. Don Orsino's not here, but he always uses the term polar vortex. And when I got on the train today to come into here, I had seen that hell had frozen over at Metra, and on every seat on my car was the announcement that mobile ticketing is here on Metra. And I will tell you, along with Leanne and some of the staff, as a user for the last several months of the smartphone ticketing vending application that is available to riders, it's a phenomenal system, and it's really cool. As Leanne will tell you, conductors, when they look at it, go, "Wow, that's really neat," and other riders are around there. But kudos to Metra and to the staffs and to all 3 service boards for their work on this. But it's really neat, and it's something that's long been awaited by Metra riders and the public. We wanted to do it right, and I think we've done it right, and it will add a 21st century level of convenience to the way that that we ticket on Metra. So it's pretty neat. If you haven't seen it, take a look at the website. Take a look at some of the ads which are running, or go to Metra's website, and this kind of explains it. But it is, if you haven't seen it, it is really cool when the little train runs around the city of Chicago, and that's your ticket. So it's pretty awesome. Item 3A is the next thing before the board, and that's the approval of the minutes from the meetings held on October 15th, 2015. Are there any questions on those minutes? You all have them in your packet. If not, can I have a motion and a second to approve? Director Totten moves that we approve the minutes from October 15th, seconded by Director Buchanan. Why don't you, Audrey, take a roll call so we have a baseline roll call if we need it.
Yep. Director Anderson.
Yes.
Director Buchanan.
Yes.
Director Colson.
Yes.
Director DeWitt.
Yes.
Director Durrani.
Yes.
Director Frega.
Yes.
Director Fuentes.
Yes.
Director Hobson.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director McGallis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Totten.
Yes.
Director Traiani.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
15 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. So those minutes are approved. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting. We have no scheduled speakers for today. I do want to thank those of you who attended some of the budget meetings that have been around the Chicago metropolitan area. We heard from members of the public on a variety of matters. Writers are never shy, neither are the public, with respect to their comments on how the agencies or service boards are doing. And I want to thank you all for attending those, especially in your area. Next is item 5, and that's the Executive Director's Report. Ms. Redden.
Thank you. Oops, if I turn my mic on. So we begin where we always begin, how much the state owes us. As of November, we're actually kind of almost at a fairly long-standing all-time low, about $194 million, which is, I guess, nothing to celebrate, but it is significantly lower. The state did some catch-up on some funds that they owed us. So Still not good, but, things are continuing to flow, I guess, is sort of the important point. But with that, to a point that I think Director Lewis was sort of talking about in the budget discussions, there is a cost for us floating this, this lag and essentially flowing funds to the service boards based on some short-term borrowing and debt we have to issue. And to that point, so far this year to date, we've been carrying just over $1.2 million in those costs. So there is a cost to the region and everybody for us having to cover those delays in funding. On the state side, still, we're now into month 5 of a budget impasse. As we've indicated to the board before, the vast majority of our sales tax revenues owed are still being distributed to us, with the exception of we've now started to see on a monthly basis, starting actually this current month, $3 million a month of what they call the state share of the use tax, or our share of the state's use tax, has stopped flowing to us. But the lion's share of the dollars, both sales tax and public transportation funds, are still currently flowing. Both the House and the Senate returned to Springfield last week to take up several legislative items. They attempted to override some of the governor's vetoes from previously passed bills, but they were unable to do so. Nonetheless, there were some glimmers of hope, some progress in a couple of areas. Last week, both Democrats and Republicans came together to pass House Bill 4305, which appropriated monies from several special funds that had been collected by the state but had not been distributed as intended, and they were citing the budget impasse as the issue. The bill provided funding for very important local and community services, like funding 911 call centers, paying out lottery winners. I guess that's not a very critical public use, but people were owed the money. It releases millions of dollars, I think very importantly, of motor fuel tax revenues to local municipalities, which is really used to cover their local road improvements and other winter repairs, and very importantly, for the local municipalities and counties to buy salt for the winter months that we're approaching. So that was very welcomed, and we saw bipartisan support across that. There was also some bipartisan agreement on reforming the state's unemployment insurance system. So it's not yet clear whether sort of these recent agreements and these progress are sort of maybe a glimmer of hope for some other movements, but we continue to stay engaged. As I mentioned, Jeremy is down there right now working with some other transportation partners to continue to talk about the future beyond budget impasse and potentially even capital. The House is not scheduled to come back again until December 2nd, and currently the Senate doesn't have a return date scheduled prior to the end of this year. So moving on to the federal agenda, I don't get to say this very often, there's been some significant progress in Washington, and our members of Congress have been working together. The majority of focus this past month has been on the Federal Surface Transportation Bill. On November 5, the House passed their version of the Surface Transportation Reauthorization and Reform Act of 2015. It has an acronym, STRR. It doesn't translate into a word, so I don't know what the rest of us in the transportation world are going to do for the next few years if this thing passes, because I don't know how I'm going to be able to walk around saying "strr" for the next 5-6 years. But the House bill provides about 1.7 less in funding in public transportation than the Senate bill over the 3-year period that they've proposed. $4.5 billion less than the Senate bill over 6 years. So over the 6-year, the current proposal, the House side proposal, provides $1.86 billion less in capital investment grants. The House and the Senate are now actually working to reconcile the two differing versions in conference committee. The conference committee was named last week, and actually Illinois has some good standing in that group. We have Congressman Lipinski, Senator Durbin, and yesterday Darren LaHood, I was going to say Ray LaHood. Darren LaHood was also named to that working committee, so Illinois has some good representation to make our points. We have been very actively engaged with the 3 service boards on some details, policy details within the elements of those bills, making sure we get everything we need and some of the unintended consequences of sometimes bill writing, making sure some things are tweaked and improved, and very good support from our delegation in Washington. It seems unlikely that the committee will be done by November 20. Another short-term extension of the Highway Trust Fund is likely to be introduced. The current one lasts until December 4. But we're still holding out hope that they'll actually get this together. There seems to be, with the change in leadership, the new speaker coming in, there seems to be a lot more coordination and cooperation happening. So it's sort of good news, interesting, exciting news. We're starting to feel kind of the work that we've been doing on our federal agenda with our Getting a Record Work Coalition is really starting to pay off and maybe reaping some dividends. The week of October 19, as I think many of you know, we were all in Washington working with our delegation and sort of pushing a lot of these issues. During that meeting, we were very much specifically focused on the PTC deadline that was looming on the Metro side and the rail side, very much focused on the long-term sustainable funding for the transportation bill, focusing on state of good repair, our core capacity funding, and then the importance of the transit parity tax benefit. And interesting development, the Illinois delegation had been very supportive of our transit tax parity issues, and a couple of weeks ago, Congressman Roscom decided to sign on to that bill also, so we saw some good progress there. And I mentioned the coalition. We continue to work as a group beyond our own sort of region and our rallying with our partners and our allies on these broader issues. We welcomed the Santa Clara Valley Transit Association system to our coalition as well. That really helps round out our Silicon Valley and our Bay Area membership of our coalition. So some strong voices with some influential areas and influential members of able to influence members of Congress. It's great to see them coming in. So we continue to work with them, especially because they've got a lot of insights and a lot of good knowledge on sort of public-private partnerships and how to leverage that in the broader space. RTA leadership has been out and about. We don't just sort of stay here downtown. The chairman and I have spoken at several regional events around the region over the last month. A couple of weeks ago, I was out in DuPage County speaking at their annual John Noel Public Transportation Conference. The topic was the most difficult trip, transit's first and last mile, and it actually dovetails exactly into some of the conversation we were having earlier about how do we integrate this broader shared mobility, the Ubers, the Lyfts, and sort of these last mile connections, and how do we get creative. We were able to talk about some of that. RTA was also able to talk about some of the analysis that we use in our planning work to show some of the market analysis that we've done, and that 20% of households in DuPage County regularly ride transit. The transit system that we have already provides about 1.3 million jobs accessible by transit on a regular basis. Finally, we were also able to talk about the network as a whole and sort of some of the efforts that we have underway with the service boards. On this slide, you also see on the right, you'll see Chairman Dillard, who had joined Metra, the Union Pacific Railroad, the Village of Lombard, and DuPage County officials in opening the completion of a $9.8 million improvement at the Lombard Metra station on the UP line that included really important pedestrian and public-facing improvements, including pedestrian underpasses, rebuilt platforms, and new canopies to provide better customer amenities. And then back on November 12th, the RTA hosted the 18th Annual Transportation Symposium and Business Exchange at the South Shore Cultural Center. This year's event had more than 250 participants, 42 vendors, government agencies, and transit agencies in the region present. And it composed of both prime and small business partners coming together to talk about business and contracting opportunities across the broader transportation landscape. It consisted of opening remarks from Chairman Dillard, myself, the CTA Metro and Pace Executive Directors, Greg Betelov of the Illinois Tollway, Randy Blankenhorn, IDOT Secretary, who also introduced Governor Rauner, who kicked off the events for us. The opening remarks were followed by probably really the meat of the day, which was the important stuff of workshops that provided insights on how to do business with transit agencies and the highway agencies, information on financing and bonding, and other informational sessions for veteran-owned and small business owners as well. In addition, there was business-to-business and business-to-transportation agency networking, which is a very important part for the small business and the DBE businesses that participate. It really, I think, speaks to the commitment that all the transportation agencies in this region have to diversity and opening up the procurement processes to a wider range of companies within our region. I also wanted to note that in the 18 years that the RTA is primarily the coordinator of this, doing this event, this was the first time that RTA with the transit operators pulled together to really plan and orchestrate this entire event without any support from an event planner. We did it all in-house, and it was kind of all hands on deck, but it actually turned out to be a very good event. I want to thank Nadine, Latoya Red, and many of the team on the procurement side who really led that with the partners from CTA, Metra, and PACE especially. I think it was a good event. Weather aside, it was a great event and a great location too. It's a beautiful space down there. And finally, not quite finally, sorry. One other thing that the chairman already talked about this, but last week I was happy to join CTA, Metra, and PACE at the press conference launching of the Ventra app. The RTA provided much of the funding for that actual app development. The service boards did the heavy lift in terms of the details of coordinating and building that app with Cubic, their private provider. It's exciting. It was a very well attended press conference. The app is now live in the public space. And I had two people this morning go, "Oh, you've already got it," and I didn't want to tell them I've had it for couple of months now, but I did talk up how great it is and easy to use, even for people that aren't necessarily technically astute. It's pretty easy. Says Director Colson, cringing. Metro riders can utilize the mobile pass to not just buy individual tickets, one-way tickets. You can buy the full suite, 10 rides and monthly passes as well. And the push was to get it up and running in the public space so Metra monthly riders for December would be able to actually buy the monthly pass and get full advantage of that app. It has other features like account management and the very important transit tracker. This is sort of step one in the app. There'll be other improvements coming along the way, so keep watching. I think it's going to become even more user-friendly and more usable across the region. I'll tell you, the morning that I went to that event, I didn't use my wallet once. My old-fashioned wallet, you know, the one with money and credit cards in it. I used my phone for everything. I used my phone to get on the metro train. I used my phone to check the connection for the 151 bus that I was getting on, and then I used my phone to pay for my coffee before the event, so I never actually took my wallet out of my bag.
You can make phone calls out, too.
I can. You know, that crazy old-fashioned thing like phone calls when I talk to people. Sorry. And then one thing I wanted to highlight, we are launching an RTA blog called Ride On. The soft launch occurred back in November, where, as we like to say, test driving it for the past few months. So we do have some posts dating back to August. It's going to replace our good old-fashioned RTA newsletter, reaching a broader audience in a much cheaper and more economical fashion, as well as really allowing us more flexibility in how we communicate with the public. It allows us to not just sort of tell important stories about the work that's happening, that we're doing, that's happening across the region, but also a way to deliver news, other information, and even opinions in a faster, more reliable fashion. We really hope that that we'll be able to feature guest bloggers on the site and really encourage you, if you have any interest in penning a piece. The chairman has agreed he will occasionally pen something and share it via the blog, and we continue to share this across the RTA family. So, and finally, we have completed, you heard about the RTA budget today, December 3rd, the service boards are coming in. We have done a round of public hearings across the region earlier in November, and that culminates with, post the December 3rd meeting, we have the final regional consolidated budget hearing here at RTA headquarters in advance of the board hopefully approving the regional consolidated budgets on December 17th. Staff Bea and myself have also, with many of you, been out making presentations on the budgets to the county boards across the entire region. We have one left to do, and then we will have wrapped up. And thank you to the board members who were able to join us and participate in those. I think those discussions and those meetings with the county officials also went very well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, we'll just go right around the horn. Director Hobson.
Yes, I suspect I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. In your conversations down in Springfield between you and the chairman, has there been any discussion in terms of recouping our costs for covering their lack or their poor financial management causing us to borrow additional funds on their behalf? Have we asked about recouping the $1.2 million that our region taxpayers pay? It, draws funds out of our operating budgets. I think it's only appropriate that they cover those costs that we're bearing on their behalf. Have there been any discussions in that vein?
No, we clearly and politely, especially when we had the substantive bill that allows us to have our $400 million or so, for lack of a better word, line of credit. I testified in front of the House Transportation Appropriations Committee, and basically told them, look, we need this bill, quite frankly, because you don't pay. That Springfield is delinquent, is the proper way to put it, I guess, in payment. The problem is, Director Hobson, and Senator Totten once served in Springfield as well. There's nursing homes, there's hospitals, there are some very sympathetic other entities that also bear the cost of the delinquency of state payments. So while our riders and taxpayers are sympathetic figures, a nursing home is probably a more sympathetic figure. So, I think we're going to have to incur that cost. It's sad to waste $1.2 million in today's report to have to borrow the money, but, I just want to keep us stably funded, and the interest cost, I guess, is the part of doing business.
Cost of doing
We
business.
pay an Illinois zip code penalty these days.
Yeah, I think what we've been focused on is making sure the monies that are sort of statutorily obligated to flow to us continue to flow. That's been the focus of getting the money that's sort of due us, and the rest is, I guess, the unfortunate cost of doing business right now.
And you should ask. She's a friend of mine, and she's your senator, and she's a good one, and somebody involved in the state's budget negotiations. You should raise that to Senator Eltoff, your own local state senator, and you have, I think, Representative Jack Franks, another important member of the House. Raise those concerns. At some point in time, the state of Illinois has got to get its fiscal act in order, where I don't care what you are, whether you're a hospital, nursing home, mass transit agency, or local unit of government, you're not having to front the state's cost of not paying you on time. I guess that's the polite way to put it. But right now, we're going to have to eat those costs. Good question. I agree with you.
I understand, and I will take that up with our state representatives, at least up in McHenry County, and I would certainly encourage my fellow board members to bring it up with their state representatives as well.
Yes, Director Lewis.
Leanne, I know, first of all, kudos for a lot of the work you've done in opening up the procurement process. I wanted to ask if the meeting on September 22nd that you and the other EDs had with the Business Leadership Council, if there was any correlation, were they able to participate in the bidders conference, and how did that manifest itself?
Well, and actually what they really did that was very helpful to us, they actually promoted it in their own newsletter. So really getting the word out amongst their membership about the event. And we continue to work with them. I know Nadine is working with Karen Lewis, their executive director, to actually do more specific follow-up to the BLC's membership on furthering business and procurement opportunities across us and the three service boards. The symposium is a great forum to bring a broader group together too, and sort of it's the prime and the sub opportunities of networking as well as learning our rules. But so that was a good opportunity, and we were really thankful for them to promote it amongst their membership to get more people to come, and it was pretty well attended, so it was good.
Excellent. Director Melvin, you have a question? Just kind of going around the table. Yes, Director Buchanan.
Yeah, I just have a question. If perchance there was a miracle and $195 million came back to the RTA, where would that money be utilized? And the other question I would have, since we have bridged the gap, why is the need for that 195? We're still in business. Would it be for capital projects? Would it be?
To clarify, the sales tax is never late. We receive that. There's a lag from the point where the customer pays it. The retailer forwards it to the Illinois Department of Revenue, and then subsequently it is sent to the RTA and other sales taxing bodies. So that's never late. What is late is the Public Transportation Fund match, right, which is part of our funding. The ASA-AFA, which is debt service subsidies to support our debt service. The use tax, as you heard, is for the first time being held up in October. The reduced fare reimbursement, the ADA fund. So those are the things, and those are already programmed monies. They are already, like for debt service or for the service boards and so forth. So it's not extra money, right? It's money that would be coming in anyway and would be programmed for certain uses. Of course, the cost of the short-term borrowing is based on us carrying like 225 million working cash notes. Because remember, in its heyday, I came in 2012, and right in that time period, the state owed us 385 million, so just short of our 400 million capacity. So we have committed to the service boards that we're going to be that shock absorber or address these delays. So we've actually reduced our working cash notes from 300 million to 225. We did that in the last year, and it's tricky because you want to be prepared in case things go up, but you don't want to carry more than you have to. So right now we carry 225 million in working cash notes, but you can see we're not using it all. And then when we look at like the letter credit, we had 93 million. We allowed that to expire, but we're replacing it with the direct placement. So that money is programmed. Yes, the costs of short-term borrowing would be money available for the service boards, for capital, for things like that, the 1.2 or whatever. But the other money is for specific programmed budget things.
So I think when they would just go to the programs that they're meant to fund. And what you would see, though, is the reduction in sort of the carrying cost, if you will, of the debt.
The interest.
Yeah.
So in other words, what you're saying is the 195, if this miraculous event ever happened, would directly go to the short-term borrowing bonds.
It would go to the various areas, like to the service boards and forward, and then we could pay down some of the debt.
Thank you.
Any questions over here? Director McGallis.
I guess the problem that we had when this first started was even wanting to borrow $400 million and getting the authority, because it put us in a position of having to go into debt to offset the delay in funding. And back to Director Hopkins' question, our comment, I think one of the considerations that we had at the beginning was that, well, we're going to have to cut the budgets. That's what we do, because the $196 million that's out there right now, we're funding, they're spending it. I mean, so it's not a matter of it's free new money. It's money that's already being spent through the borrowing that we're doing. So our option would be, if we don't want to have to pay that $1.5 million, which if you actually added it up for all the years we've been doing this, that's a lot more than that. We would have to say we're not going to borrow, and we're not going to, and the service boards would have to cut their budgets. I mean, that's something that a senator could say to you. Well, you have an option. Don't borrow the money. Cut the budgets. Well, that's not something at the time, that was something that we were going to do. So we continued to borrow the money. It's unfortunate, but that's the way we've been doing it.
Absolutely. Director Totten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know whether it was Director Coulson or myself who raised the question some time ago. regarding this contract on getting this coalition together of all these transit agencies around the country. It's a pretty big contract, as I remember, dollar amount. But let's just take the Santa Clara Transit District that just joined. What are they asked to do? Are members of the transit board going to sit down with members of Congress? Are they going to write letters? Are they going to issue a progress report to the contractor, who then in turn issues a report to us telling us in detail what's going on for the money that we're spending on this contract?
Well, first of all, the lion's share of that contract was actually for our public affairs lobbyists and consultants in Washington that do work specifically for us. There was a piece of that contract which was communications and sort of public affairs side of things that's helped support the coalition. To be clear, that we're not really paying Santa Clara to do anything. They've joined in the coalition. They're just echoing the same points that we're making. We essentially share all our information and make it available to other members of the coalition to use, essentially have the same talking points. We're all talking off the same song sheet, if you will. But we get to be the beneficiaries, the Bay Area people. They've done a lot of creative things in terms of public-private partnerships. So it's sort of really bringing a coalition of people together that have common interests and like-minded interests, and are giving us a forum for all talking to each other. I mean, in terms of a report back to us, we do a monthly conference call and we talk about activities we all have going on. But like I said at the beginning, the lion's share of the dollars for that contract is for our specific lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C.
I think at one time, and I go back to, again, to Director Colson and myself, we both questioned this contract when it came up, that I think there was an understanding that we would be receiving some hard copies, not conference calls, of the progress report. In other words, if Santa Clara members were all going to send letters to their congressman, copies of those letters would go to the contractor, and the contractor would tend to look at, here's all the pile of stuff we did this month for $350,000 or whatever it costs.
And we've provided on an annual basis a report on the activities of the consulting team as well as the coalition members. I can pull out the last one. This contract ends early next year, and we'll be looking at what the next steps are beyond that. But we have been providing data, and I mean, every month I present to you kind of the latest activities of what we've been doing out and about. I mean, the biggest metric, the highest metric, the most important metric we have was our goal of getting a federal transportation bill funded and passed. And we are dangerously close to actually accomplishing that. So I think that's the success measure that beats all other success measures.
Just a comment, if I could, Director Totten. I didn't know, and I wasn't a member of this board when that contract was let, but our lobbyist, Jim Smith in Washington, one of the things that's impressed me is he is focused and an expert on transportation. So that is, to me, critical. And the respect when I'm out there and he is moving us around, and we were in Washington, I was there for 3 days a couple of weeks ago, is tremendous. And he has a tremendous respect, and Congressman Lipinski and Quigley and others help. But we have access. Congressman Schuster, the chairman of the Transportation Committee of the U.S. House, is intricately familiar with the CTA and the RTA of Chicago. Congressman DeFazio, the Democrat lead member. The U.S. DOT, when you walk in there with our representative, he knows every staff person, and having once been a staffer, and you can tell by our staff here, the staff are as important as the members, and in some cases more important than the members. So from a transportation standpoint, not only is he a lobbyist, or his firm, and it's more than just him, there are members of his firm, they cover a lot of bases, and I've been pretty favorably impressed. Just the fact that in the environment that is in Washington today, that there's movement in transportation. There's hardly movement on anything, but things are going, fairly well in Washington on the transportation side of things. And I think with respect to most of the major transit agencies in America, and we don't just see our own delegation, and our delegation has been great. Mark Kirk, Dick Durbin, the time that these members give us, Congressman Kelly, is the access and the time is very impressive when we're out there. But our Chicago RTA operation educates the nation's congressmen and women on transportation issues, and I'm astonished at not only our own delegation's knowledge, but the knowledge of the members of the transportation-related committees of the United States Congress have been fed information and really have great access to our needs here when we go see them. And that's just not something, you got to be on the ground in Washington to do that. Plus, Mr. Smith, who's our lead operator, is from Illinois. He's an Illinois native. That is also important to me, that he understands the state intricately. He's not just a DC person, but he really is an expert and an authoritative figure that has great respect from the members of Congress and their staff on transportation-specific issues. And to me, that's paid huge dividends.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
I don't question the capabilities of Mr. Smith, but when we were asked to pass this contract, one of the quid pros that came before the board was that as they get coalition members, we will ask them to participate in the financing of the contract. Now, I don't think that has ever happened, and I don't even think anybody asks about it, but that was one of the caveats to get some board support, was that we wouldn't bear the whole cost of this contract. Some of the coalition members would help and participate, but that hasn't happened.
Well, I think what happened, we came to the board and the board made that request of staff. Staff went back and talked to some key members of other agencies around the region. We also were asked to look at how much everyone's spending on federal lobbying dollars, and actually the total cost of this contract is significantly less than, metro areas around the country are paying. What we came back to the board and said, we reported that back to the board, and what we came back and said was, this is our investment into a federal lobbying effort, and likewise other agencies around the country are spending that and more. One of the strategies or the tactics that we were trying to employ was sort of to build a tent of people that could sort of lend their voices to the conversation to sort of complement even the work they were doing as well locally. So we did have conversations with several agencies around the country about their interest in actually contributing to this, and they already were saying, we're spending $500,000 plus a year, over a period of time on their own federal lobbying, and so what they were going to do is lend their own staff support and resources to the coalition, and that's really how it's played out.
One of the charges, Don, when I arrived here and met the senior staff for the first time, and it comes from both my time working for governors as well as being active in a National Legislators Association, is I ask them, how often do you talk to your counterparts in New York or Atlanta? And I will say this coalition has, I think, improved the communication levels between the Bay Area. Philadelphia is an organization that we talk to regularly, but I hear what you're saying, and Leanne and I and the staff will revisit this. But the coalition has clearly improved the communications between all of the major mass transit agencies in the country, and I think that's had a positive impact when we're out there. And again, when we go visit Washington, yes, we focus on our own delegation, but we know there are major players like Congressman DeFazio and Schuster that are critical to us. And through the coalition and through our own efforts, these members of Congress really do understand what's happening here in Chicago and the needs that we have as a major metropolis in this country.
And just to close, we'll happily pull the last report that we put together with all the metrics and the activities of all coalition members over the previous year. The last one we did, I'll pull that together and get that back out to you.
Director Colson.
Yeah, my name was used in debate. My recollection concurs with that of Director Totten. As I recall, this contract, we initially voted it down, and then we came back the next month and we approved it. And one of the representations was that these other agencies are going to be at least asked to participate financially. I would be very curious, Leanne, you don't have to commit now, but what we're going to do in February when this contract expires, because I think you ought to involve at least Director Totten and me and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, Leanne, let's sometime, and it might be the first or second week of January, but let's have Director Totten, Colson, myself, Jeremy LaMarche. Let's sit down and go through this. And again, I'm not pleading ignorance here, but I wasn't here when that contract was let. I can just tell you what my experience is as a result of that. And then, if need be, Leanne, I'm not shy about asking the other mass transit agencies nationally to contribute.
Yeah, we at the staff level have actually already been talking about that. Claire, Saduk, and Jeremy, myself have already had, and actually Nadine a little bit, have had some conversations about what the game plan is, actually strategizing on what we think some scenarios might be moving forward. So we will absolutely be sitting down with you probably even before the beginning of the year.
And we probably have to, our congressional delegation has been great. Congressman Lipinski is the chairman or co-chair of the House Mass Transit Caucus, and we probably need to get a candid input from the variety of members, bipartisan, of our congressional delegation too, as to what they think has been effective.
And just as a side note, the establishment of that caucus was a direct byproduct of the work that we did in this coalition. I mean, this group did not exist but for our putting it together essentially and working with the Congressman's office to highlight the issue that there was a caucus for everything in Congress but public transportation. And so people were sort of shocked they hadn't thought about it, but we were the ones that were sort of integral in really pulling that caucus together.
And it's more than just the Congress. It is, I said, USDOT, the FRA. It's the administration as well. Director Ross.
Mr. Chairman, if there's going to be some kind of a committee on this, I'd like to participate also.
Sure.
My recollection is slightly different than that of my two esteemed colleagues. The former director and the chief of staff who were here, who initially made that proposal, I believe walked that back after some discussion with this board. I personally believe that the Smith firm is doing a good job. I think we would have paid for a federal relations effort in Washington, D.C. anyway. I think it was smart of us to form this coalition and try to bring our partners on board. So I'd like to be part of any discussion that goes forward.
Absolutely.
Also as a supporter.
Welcome that. Thank you, Director. I love it. Director McGallis.
Having been through that process, I remember what Director Colson and Director Totten talked about. I mean, there was no argument about the need for it, and there was no argument about the performance of the people that would be involved. The real argument, if there was an argument, was more toward okay, we're putting up this much for our lobbyists in D.C., and we're putting up this much to prop up a new group called the Coalition for Transportation. And that was the dollar amount that the discussion focused on, was the amount that was going toward the federal effort. And there were a lot of big name players in there from other transit agencies and concerns. And the question that we had was, well, what are they going to contribute and when would they contribute? Now, this has gone on for a long time. I don't know exactly. It certainly predated Leanne as director of the agency. It goes way beyond that. But I think it would be interesting to know how much we're still allocating to it and how much anybody else is allocating to it, because it is a national effort. It's a great effort. Nobody's arguing that. But I think we need to know if we're taking local dollars and also allocating it out to a national effort like that. The whole idea was to get that to be seed money, the way I remember it, to get other people to get involved, to join, and to start helping with the funding. And I too would like to see not so much we've heard the success. I mean, we've seen that. You brought that report. It's been very successful. I'm more interested in what the financial initial arrangement was and what we have been contributing all this time as part of our federal expenditure. So we can just take a second look, especially with the February date coming up, because it'll come up obviously from Director Totten or one of us anyway. So.
No, thank you very much. Anything else? Leanne, I know time flies when you're having fun, but I think this is it's hard to believe you've been here 10 years, but this is, I think this month, maybe your 10-year anniversary at some capacity at the RTA. So, here's to, as I said, time flies when you're having fun, but thank you very much. 10 years is yeoman service, and there's a lot to be said for continuity and your knowledge and leadership here. So well done. Any other questions before we move on to a consent item and to an action item? All right, let's move on, if we could, to item 6, which is the approval of a consent item as it appears on the board agenda, and that's the resolution certifying the financial reports as given to us by B. Raina Hickey earlier today for the third quarter of 2015. Any more questions? The Finance Committee did a thorough job. If not, Director McGallis moves that we approve this consent item, seconded by Director Melvin. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection.
15 ayes and 1 absent.
Leave is granted. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item 7 is the approval of contract and procurement, a procurement item as it appears on the board agenda, and that's the ordinance authorizing a contract to conduct a cyber security audit. Leanne or Mike Zumich, do you have anything to say on this one?
Actually, we tried to put as much as we could in the memo. This is a project we've been working on for a little over 2 years to get a qualified firm to come in and do this work. Again, what we're saying is we need to have verification that all the right actions are being taken by the service boards, and that's what the focus of this is, both on the information technology side and the operational technology, which is the switches and all those types of things. So that's the focus of this review.
Any questions? I read the written report, and the written report is thorough, and it's a catch-22 in the world as we have more transparency and more reliance upon technology and our use of cyberspace, to make sure that we're protected and having experts warn us of pitfalls that are out there that we lay people may not think of is part of today's business world. Yes, Director Lewis.
Michael, in light of what happened in Paris, would there be any additional impact on what we might ask them to look at, or do you think that what we've got laid out in the plan is sufficient to really kind of encompass those elements?
Well, what the situation in Paris really wouldn't impact what we're going to do on this. This is more us making sure our systems are protected against people getting into them and doing nefarious acts that we don't want them to do. I did have discussions with several people this morning regarding some of the additional security precautions that are being taken by the board, but that security is different than this information technology security. So we're trying to keep the two separate.
Although cybersecurity, is part of everyday life as well as terrorism. So that's why we're doing this, is and I think we'll probably find out some things from the firm that we may never have thought of, that may scare us or may comfort us. So with that, can I have a motion to approve the contract that we go out and do a cybersecurity audit?
Anyone?
So moved by Director Fuentes, seconded by Director DeWitt, that we do what most American businesses do, and that's have a cybersecurity audit. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on that?
15 ayes and 1 absent.
Great, thank you, Madam Secretary. Item 9 is new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? If not, our next meeting is, I want to remind everybody of the December 3rd Finance Committee meeting, which you're all invited to with the 3 service boards. But our next real meeting, our full meeting, is Thursday, December 17th, starting with committees at 8:30 right here in our regular board meeting. And then you can all do your holiday shopping after that, because we need the sales tax revenue. So, if not, if there's nothing else to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Senator Totten always likes to make that motion to adjourn, as he did when he was a senator, thinking that the world is safer when the legislature's probably not in session. Seconded by Director Colson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.